Welcome to the fourth and long-winded podcast. This is episode number 3. My name is Dan, and with me, as always, is Cody. Cody, how are you doing today?
Can't complain. I'm getting real excited for March Madness.
Yeah, it's Selection Sunday. When we're recording this, Selection Sunday is tomorrow. Probably by the time you listen to it, it'll probably already be selected, and maybe games will be happening. I don't know. Today, we're going to get into the first episode of what we're going to do over 10 episodes called State of the Conference. We're going to start with the SEC today, but we're basically just going to give a review of what each conference is right now. It's pretty self-explanatory. We'll get into that a little bit later, but first, let's hit on some of the news topics that have come out in this last week. First, obviously, the big story from this past week is Les Miles at Kansas and LSU, and the AD, Jeff Long at Kansas. Pretty sure everybody's heard about that at this point. It's a freaking terrible situation. LSU needs to get their shit together in terms of following up on reports. Kansas needs to get their shit together in looking into who they're hiring. Everybody just needs to get their shit together. Pretty sure this happens on a broader scale. But what are your thoughts on this, Cody?
I mean, so it's embarrassing for me as a college football fan. I'm a big college football fan, but all of the gripes and complaints about college football from anyone and anywhere say that it's too costly, it's too expensive, it brings too many problems to campus. And it's just another reason for people to say, like, we shouldn't have college athletes. And while I disagree with that sentiment, I can't, there's no way to respond to anything other than saying, yeah, I mean, that really sucks. I'm upset about it. The Kansas's AD was Jeff Long, right?
Yes, yeah.
Jeff Long should have, I mean, he knew about it. He had to have known about it. There's no way he didn't know about it. Those guys talk. I'd be confident to say that the president of Kansas knew about it. And they hired him anyways. And if they didn't know about it, they didn't do a very good job, because how does a university have an investigation and no one finds out about it? That just doesn't seem.
So basically, the president, he's not the president of LSU now, but I think he came out in these last couple of days. And he said that if somebody would have asked him what happened with Les Miles and LSU during that time period, he would have lied to him. So I think it's easy to kind of say they're all presidents, they're all in this club, they all talk to each other. But I think there is at least a chance that the people at LSU, because this happened several times now at LSU. I mean, there's the Darius guy situation a couple of years ago that it was reported, nothing was ever done about it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just, they tried to throw it under the rug and just hide it. And so I think there's at least a chance that Kansas
I think that's a good point.
Forgive them for anything. But
I think that's a very good point. Maybe Kansas doesn't have any real responsibility or culpability with this. Maybe it's not their fault. And they just were dealt a bad hand. But how long was Les Miles out of coaching? He was out a year and a half, wasn't he?
I think, his last year was in 2016 at LSU. And then was this his second or third year at Kansas this past year?
I
think it was his second.
Yeah.
I believe it was his second. So there was, roughly about 2 years there where he was out of coaching.
I just think it's wild that it took this long for this to come out. This is how Penn State happens. This is how
Baylor
happens. This is how, it happens over and over and over again. When are they gonna get a grip on it? I just don't.
It's got to be just a complete change to the system, in my opinion, because this shit happens everywhere. This isn't just a single isolated situation at LSU or Baylor or
Penn State. It makes me feel like maybe we shouldn't have athletic directors. We should have an athletic board that is, I don't know, or overseeing board just specifically for athletics. I don't know the
Maybe
right system, don't know the solution, but man, it's,
maybe there's something. Maybe there's something separate. Somebody has control, since football is so big and so large. The athletic director probably spends the majority of their time on football and the rest of the time. But what if there's the athletic director focuses on all the sports other than football and maybe basketball at the schools that basketball is really big as well, and you just have one guy whose job it is to focus on the football team, control the culture, control everything, control reports. I also, completely separate, this came up in my mind, but the Title IX report that came out for LSU, it was reported that LSU's Title IX office is like severely understaffed, severely underfunded. Like, I think they had like 2 full-time employees that were there to deal with like hundreds and hundreds of reports and claims. And it's just, that is complete ignorance on the fact LSU literally just were like,
That's
yeah,
unacceptable.
It's unacceptable.
You're spending millions of dollars on a football coach, but you can't spend $100,000 on 2 different Title IX coordinators. Like, no.
It screams that they just have it just to say they have it because they have to have it. Like, that's the only reason that there even is an office.
Yeah, I mean, that's
completely ridiculous.
Feels, honestly.
All right, well, there's our 2 cents on LSU, Les Miles, Kansas, all that stuff. I know it's been talked about a lot. So move on, a couple more news topics from this past week. Tom Allen and Indiana have agreed to a revised 7-year contract that is now worth about $4.9 million per year.
All right, Purdue.
So great. Not so great for me as a Purdue fan, but pretty great news if you're an Indiana fan, because I think he's building a strong program that's going to be good for the next several years.
I really hope
some sad news for you, Cody. The Cincinnati.
Hold on. I really hope to see Tom Allen in Indiana for a while. I don't want to see him go somewhere bigger. I
think he's a good fit for that hardworking Indiana culture. So some sad news for you, Cody. Of course, you've heard Lucy the Bearcat, UC's longtime live mascot, was put down at the Cincinnati Zoo this past week after a year-long battle with cancer. That's some pretty sad news. She had been to every single home game, I think, since like 2008 or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really cool. Like, even through the pandemic, they got her up from the zoo to the stadium, and it's a real bummer. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to find a suitable replacement after an appropriate amount of time of mourning. But I mean, anyone who knows the Cincinnati area knows that, like, the UC and the zoo they're literally right next to each other. They share parking lots, and they have a great partnership, and it's a really sad thing to see happen. Mm-hmm. But cancer sucks.
Yeah.
No matter
some
what
good
animal
news
or species.
Yeah. Good point. Some good news, or at least some positive news. EA Sports says that it intends to release the new video game NCAA football in July of 2023. So we still got about 2.5 years to wait for that, but it's coming.
Goodness.
It's coming.
I have to say something about this.
Okay.
I bought the Xbox Series X specifically so that I could play this new game. I know I'm 2 years early.
Yeah.
I don't care. That thing will sit and gather dust until I can play that game. I am, like, more excited for that game than I've possibly been excited for very, very many things. I'm not going to say my wedding coming up this year, but it's up there. It's up there.
It's a close second to that, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Finally, this came out yesterday. Nebraska was afraid to play Oklahoma. It's not really what happened.
I mean, are we surprised?
It's not really what happened, but I mean, that's the optics of the situation.
Yeah.
And I don't care what they were trying to do. They were trying to get it.
Looks so dumb. Nebraska is such a joke.
Cool, but I thought that was funny.
I can't wait to get into talking about. I'm coming up whenever we do our conversation on the Big Ten. I am going to shit on Nebraska.
Probably well deserved.
I want them to be good, but they've not made a single decision that's made sense aside from hiring Scott Frost in the last 3 decades.
I don't even know if hiring Scott Frost was a good decision.
I don't either.
Maybe
but it
it's
wasn't,
a little too early.
On paper, it looked like a good decision.
Yeah. All right, well, that's all the news topics I have. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll get into State of the Conference, SEC.
All right, Dan. Well, let's start talking about the SEC.
Let's do it.
I think that how I think we should do this is just start with a team, and we each kind of rattle off a team. I don't want to say too much on each team because we got to get through 14 different teams.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go ahead and start on Alabama if you want.
Okay, sounds good to me.
And my take on Alabama is it's really fun to watch. I'm not a
They're
fan.
good.
I'm not a fan of Alabama and dynasties. I personally don't like to see dynasties. I love seeing different teams win every year, but man, is it cool to watch Nick Saban just destroy everybody and make people cry.
And there's no end in sight.
No, I mean, he's going to do this till he's 85 years old, and then he's going to become the athletic director and de facto coach like Barry Alvarez of Wisconsin.
Anytime they fire their head coach, he goes in and coaches the final game.
Yeah, I mean, that's straight up what's going to happen, man. We know that. And I think it's what's even more insane is that Nick Saban has not only transformed the football program at Alabama, but he's transformed the entire athletic department.
He's transformed college football, period.
Transformed college football, period. But the impact that he has had at that particular university is you can't. I mean, I know it's not directly him, but kids from other sports want to go to Alabama because they can be around him and that winning program.
Look at the basketball team.
Their basketball team, their women's basketball team, their baseball team, their softball team, their gymnastics team. I mean, all of them are ranked in the top 10 right now. It's absurd how good they all are.
Yeah.
And so kudos. I mean, I guess we can give credit to the athletic director, but at the end of the day,
no credit
Nick
to the
Saban.
athletic
You hired him and he transformed the university. That's what he's done for you.
Yeah.
Do you really have anything? Oh, a number one recruiting class of all time this year. That's my other key piece here. I totally forgot to mention that when I'm mentioning all this other accolades and things that he's done. It's really impressive. It's really impressive.
There's really not much more to say on Alabama, to be honest. We all kind of know that they're the top tier of college football, and they're not really going anywhere soon. So let's move on. Let's talk Texas A&M.
Yeah.
The Aggies.
Yeah, so
the best up and coming team in the SEC right now, in my opinion.
I would tend to agree with you. I think that Jimbo Fisher is doing what he was hired to do. Texas A&M spends a lot of money on football and athletics in general, and they want to see improvement. I think this year was kind of proof to show that, Jimbo's proof of concept can work at Texas A&M. This can happen. I think they were missing a couple key pieces, but they could, in my opinion, they could be competing for the SEC title within the next year or two. Maybe not this coming year, but the following year, I definitely think that.
I think that should be the goal starting this coming year. Their goal should be SEC title and playoffs. That's the new bar that they've set now, finishing this past season off. I mean, I know I was skeptical when Jimbo Fisher first got hired. I didn't think it was going to work. I honestly didn't think it was going to work. I thought he'd burn out after 3 or 4 years of 9-3, 8-4 seasons, and it'd be like, all right, that's not really what we wanted to get out of here.
Everything that we know about Texas A&M is just that.
Yeah. But I'm very surprised. I think they're a legitimate threat now. I think they've passed Georgia.
I would tend to agree with you. Well, they're exciting, and like they've got the stadium's always been there. It's a huge stadium. The 12th man's always been there, but there's something about the 12th man that actually is playing against or is watching an exciting team that has a great offense and is rolling. That's just exciting to watch, and I think that is going to translate to recruits. They're the number 7th ranked recruiting class in the country. They are the number 4 ranked recruiting class in the SEC, which is wild that they're that low. But that's an improvement over anything that Kevin Sumlin did. I just don't.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I'm ready to see what's next for Texas A&M.
All right, let's move to a team that's kind of moving in the opposite direction, or at least have plateaued. Georgia. They kind of were a couple years ago where Texas A&M plans on being this next couple years.
Yeah,
fighting in the playoffs. They were in the national championship game until they were going to win the national championship game until Tua came in. But Georgia is the most frustrating team to watch on offense. It's agonizing to watch. It makes you want to turn the channel anytime that they're on offense.
Generally do. The first actual Georgia game that I watched, besides like the Alabama-Georgia game, because that's always a good game, first actual Georgia game I watched in years was their game against UC this year. And it was an exciting game. They played really well, but they were still very boring to watch.
UC should have won that game.
They should have, yeah. But you can't complain about the end score because they let them score too many times, and that's what happens when you let them score. You lose. But I think that it also how they play their boring style of play, it affects recruiting. Because these high school level recruits, I'm just thinking about myself. If I was a high schooler in that position, like I'm a really talented guy, I want to go somewhere that is exciting to play. Like I'm going to have fun playing there. I'm going to have fun scoring 20, 30 touchdowns. And it's just like, that's not Georgia. It's ground and pound. Maybe they're going to attract linemen, but
defensive players,
but you're not going to attract the Amari Coopers,
the players you need to win a national championship this day and age. The Joe Burrows, the Devonta Smiths, that caliber of player.
Well,
to be on your team.
And I think a perfect example of that is Deshaun Watson when Mark Richt was there. He was recruited heavily by Georgia, and they lost him. I mean, he's from Georgia, right?
Yeah.
And
are you thinking Trevor Lawrence?
No. Deshaun Watson went to Clemson, and he was heavily recruited by Georgia, and actually that's like one of the main reasons they fired Mark Richt was because they didn't get him. Mm-hmm. And then they saw him playing at Clemson, blowing people up at Clemson. That was like a huge reason that they got rid of Mark Richt. And I think like Kirby Smart's seat is getting warm. Because he actually has I don't know the exact numbers, but I saw a graphic earlier in the year, and it was like Kirby Smart has like lost one more game than Mark Richt did in the like first 4 years, and so I mean they're essentially the same, and you're still boring. They do have the number 3 recruiting class, which is a plus for them.
But they've had the number 1 recruiting class like 2 or 3 years ago. They've had high recruiting classes. It hasn't resulted in anything.
Yeah, exactly. I think that that's like a big part of this is I just don't know. Maybe we're too critical of Georgia, but I want to see something out of them if they're gonna continue on and win some natties.
Yeah. All right, who you want to move on to next?
Well, we can talk about Florida.
Okay.
I just briefly touch on Florida. I think that they're also on the upswing. I think that they're probably a little bit behind Texas A&M.
Yeah.
That would be my thought about about Florida. And then I kind of thought, like, just moving forward, when you're going to be recruiting, they ended up. I'm trying to see. They're 13th overall, so they're at least 5th in the SEC, 5th or 6th. And I got to thinking about it, and they're in the SEC East, which is a huge advantage for them. The SEC East, you get to be in the SEC, so you have to play Georgia, and then you get to play Alabama in the SEC championship. Basically every year, it's either you or Georgia getting to play there.
1 and 2 shot every year.
Yeah, and so that's a huge recruiting thing, right? Like, oh, you'll be. If we win all our games, you're almost in the national championship picture, right? But I think that that's the only thing that draws people to Florida. And like, if you think about it, Gainesville is not near a beach. I mean, it's an okay town, nothing super special. I think I'd rather be in Orlando or Miami or Tallahassee, where drive to the beach isn't that bad.
Yeah. But at the same time, they have had the best recruiting classes in the state of Florida the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, they own the state of Florida, and that's a big thing, and it's an important thing if they want to continue to be competitive. You could say that it's the only I wouldn't completely agree and push back a little bit on the only reason that they get recruits is because that they have that 1 and 2 shot of playing the SEC title game every yeyear.
I'm not saying that's the only reason. I'm just saying that if I'm a recruit and that was not allowed to be part of my criteria, I'm picking Miami. I'm going to go to the U.
Yeah. But if you're a good player and you want to be on a good team contending for a title, you're going to Florida. You're not going to Miami.
And that's fair. But what happens if the SEC starts falling off?
What are the signs that the SEC is falling off? Or
I'm throwing out a hypothetical here. What happens if the SEC starts falling off?
Terrible hypothetical.
Who are they going to recruit?
It's a terrible hypetical. The SEC
I think it's a great hypothetical.
Death, taxes, and the SEC. That is the only 3 constants in life.
All right.
That's the one thing we could count on for the rest of the
time. You want to hit on LSU?
Yeah, let's hit on LSU a little bit. That's an interesting story.
Yeah. Well, so we talked about it a little earlier, and I think that LSU, they need to get their shit together because off the field issues taint on the field progress. I mean, Les Miles didn't win any games, but I don't think that if you would have won any games at Kansas, it would have done anything for him. Because this whole thing, the off the field issues make a difference. It hurts your team. They did have like what I consider to be the greatest team of all time in 2019.
At least in the conversation.
On my pick of greatest singular teams of all time, that's it. And then number 2 is 2020 Alabama. But I'm pretty sure Alabama has like 4 or 5 of those placeholders. But they're not that far removed from being really great. Really, really, really great. And I think the off the field stuff could hurt them because it hurts them with recruiting. It hurts them with the fan base. It hurts them with donations. It hurts them all over, and they need to get a grip on it. You're focused on winning, that's fine, but let's focus on winning and like kind of covering up the shit that you're doing wrong. Yeah.
See, my look at it is more from a on the field coach system. I don't think Ed Orgeron's the right coach. Not right now. This upcoming season is a huge season for Coach O and LSU from the top down. They need to get better at an academic or at a administrative level, and they need to get better on the field because last season was a disaster.
Yeah.
And it's not like they didn't have any talent. They have talent. They'll continue to have talent. I think you mentioned that they're the second best recruited class in the SEC.
Yep.
For this coming year. Maybe it was just the way I'm seeing it right now is that 2019 was a perfect storm where you had the greatest college football quarterback season ever from Joe Burrow. You had playmakers all over the field on offense and defense. And you had the best offensive coach in the country, at least last year, in Joe Brady.
Yeah.
Or in 2019, who's moved on and he's now with the Panthers the Carolina Panthers as their offensive coordinator. So my worry is that Coach Ho didn't have anything to do really with the on-the-field team in 2019. He was just kind of there, and he was a fun story, but he doesn't actually make your football team better. That's unfair. He does make your football team better at least a little bit, but is he the reason that they won that 2019 national championship? No. And if he doesn't turn around this coming season, there's going to be a lot of questions, and it's going to get real hot. His seat's going to get real hot real quick.
Yeah, and I don't think that they need to win a national title every year. They just need to be in contention for it.
Yes,
they
cannot be a 500 team like they were this past year.
Nope. They really need to be winning 10 games at a minimum. That's the floor for LSU.
100% agree.
And so, I mean, there's not much more to say about LSU. They could be great. They could be mediocre.
It's a big season coming up. Yeah, we'll see.
Big season.
I want to throw out Auburn. We'll talk about Auburn next. And then maybe we'll jump on to one of the lesser known teams because we kind of gone from the top down so far. Maybe we'll jump around a little bit after this. But Auburn fired their head coach, Gus Malzahn. New head coach is Brian Harsin, something like that.
Yeah, Harsin.
This is a Boise State guy. Yep. Can't lie to you. I don't know how good of a coach he is. I know Boise State's really good every year, but
he's solid. I think the thing is when you hire a coach from a team like Boise State's always going to be dominant in their conference.
Yeah.
So it is still a bit of a gamble, in my opinion, because Boise State they have more money than anybody in their conference. They get more money from the TV deal that the Mountain West gives, and so I think that I'm not super thrilled with having fired their coach. Yeah, Gus Malzahn. I'm not super thrilled with having fired him. But that being said, Auburn fans are crazy.
I mean, if you look at the last five, here's the record the last 5 years. I can kind of see how he was fired.
I can see it.
6-5 this past year, 9-4 the year before, 8-5, 10-4, 8-5. So they're pretty mediocre, honestly, in terms of the standard of Auburn these past couple of years. And I maybe give him another year, but I mean, I'm not going to complain.
That would have been my move. But I get it. I do get it. I just think we've been hearing, are they going to fire him? Are they going to fire him? Are they going to fire him? Are they going to fire him for 3 years now? And it's fucking do it. Fucking do it or don't. I don't know. I think that also hampers Harsin's new the ability for him to do his job, because it's if he has his first season is bad, then are they going to fire him? Are they going to fire him? And if that's always in the conversation, you don't get the recruits that you need to win. And I think that the alumni at Auburn really kind of need to think about that if they are meddling in this so much that they're always there. I don't know.
I think we need to reevaluate a little bit what we think of Auburn, because if I'd ask you right now, is Auburn in the same tier? If we were to put tiers, Alabama's at the God tier. They're number one. Nobody's in their tier. And then that second tier right now in the SEC, at least, it's Georgia, it's Texas A&M, and maybe put Florida in that tier. Yep. Maybe it's a tier below, but you get the point. Are you putting Auburn in that tier? Because I think that's what a lot of people think that Auburn needs to be.
Auburn should be there. Auburn absolutely should be there, but they are not currently.
I don't know if they should be, because maybe this is what they are. They're going to be mediocre for a couple of years, and then Cam Newton signs with them, and they win the national championship. Or
I say they should be just because of how much money their alumni spent.
It's a good, yeah, but what has that produced? It's produced one national championship and a kick six win over Alabama.
And I get that. I'm just saying, like, if you're looking at how much money they produce, you need more. You need more.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see what Brian Harsin does, and then we'll make an assessment on him after this first season, kind of see where he's at. It's kind of hard to tell right now coming from Boise.
I hope he does well because I like him. I've liked watching him coach Boise State. They're a fun team. He's been fun. So I think I want to move to a team that I think we're going to have some disagreement on.
Okay.
Vanderbilt.
All right. The seller of the SEC.
So I think that while they have been the seller of the SEC since James Franklin left, I think there is potential for Vanderbilt to raise the floor. I don't think they're ever going to compete for an SEC title. Ever. But I think that they can win 8 games in a season.
8 games?
8 games. I know that's embarrassing, but I think it's possible.
No, I think that's 8 games. If 8 games is insane, I don't think they're ever going to win 8 games ever again.
Really?
Ever.
Seriously?
Ever again.
I think Clark Lee is a really good hire. I really.
Who? Who is this? I've never even heard of Clark Lee.
He was Notre Dame's defensive coordinator.
Okay.
I think that he's a really good hire. My only critique of the hire specifically is that I think Vanderbilt should have gone with an offense guy because that's kind of what their fan base has been clamoring for because their offense has been terrible. But Clark Lee has been building a really competent football staff. I listen to a couple other football podcasts, and one particularly, there was this gentleman who he evaluated for CBS Sports. He did evaluations on players, and he actually lived in Nashville. His name's Barton Simmons, and he got hired as a member of Vanderbilt's coaching staff. And just I've been following them and seeing different things that they're doing. And I really just feel like there's potential to develop players there. And they're finally starting to convince the administration that they need to put money into.
See, that's the problem. That's the big issue right there. Is that last thing you said. And I just don't see them actually having a reason to. They need to win 8 games in a season before they'll start putting real money into the system and real money into
I honestly
the facility.
think that it's gonna be one of those things that the SEC will say, hey, you either do this or you aren't in the SEC anymore. And I honestly think the SEC
maybe that's for the best. Maybe that's for the best because maybe Vanderbilt.
I agree. I think it would be for the best. Maybe Vanderbilt has to go independent, or maybe they have to.
AAC, American Athletic Conference.
Oh yeah,
Vanderbilt
and the American, that would be amazing.
Perfect. Perfect.
But unfortunately, I'm pretty sure Vanderbilt's a founding member of the SEC, so I don't think that the SEC could kick them out. I'm not sure how
I don't
know how the governing structure, but they've been in the SEC forever. I think that. So I went to Kentucky versus Vanderbilt at Kentucky this past year.
Yeah.
And the difference between Kentucky and Vanderbilt, the players at Vanderbilt were probably the same caliber as Kentucky. The difference between Kentucky, I think
we'll talk about Kentucky in a little bit, and I'm actually very optimistic on where Kentucky is.
I'm optimistic moving forward on Kentucky, but I really think that they are competing for these kind of similar players. Maybe not the same, but some similar players.
Yeah.
And looking at them on the field, I don't know any of the names on the teams, but they were the same size, the same speed. That's what they looked very similar. The difference between the two teams was that Kentucky was motivated and Vanderbilt was not. That
was a big Derek Mason issue, and that's why he ended up getting fired. And he he had no control over everybody, didn't motivate anybody at the end.
The team did, you could literally see it on the field.
Yeah.
The team did not care. They were joking, laughing, slapping each other's back after literally getting tackled for a loss of 30. And it's like, you can't fix that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and Vanderbilt would have won that game if they would have given it a tiny bit of a shit more. They only lost that game by 3 points. And then they wouldn't have been winless last year.
Yeah.
Just give a shit.
But then they were given, they're just in the worst possible situation, right? Hopefully, whatever his name, Cliff Lee, whatever his name is. Cliff Lee is what I'm going to call him. Cliff Lee, famous lefty for the Philadelphia Phillies back in the day. Maybe he'll be able to motivate this team, but that culture has been established now, and it's going to take it until he actually gets getting his own guys in there. But there's just no hope over these next couple of years for the
next couple of years they're dog water. But I
looked it up as well. They were an original founding member of the SEC.
So I don't think that the SEC could kick them out, but I would still try if I was the SEC. Do you want to go and talk about? I actually have a team that I think is worse than Vanderbilt.
Okay.
South Carolina.
Yeah.
I think South Carolina is a fucking garbage fire. I think it's a garbage fire that's being doused in dog water. Like, this team is bad. They're going to be bad. They have okay. You want to know, guess overall, not in the SEC, because we know they're 14th ranked in the SEC in recruiting for this past year. Guess what overall they are?
125.
No, not that bad.
92.
78.
Damn. Bowling Green's probably like 87, right?
Yeah. UC was 45.
Yeah, that's pretty freaking terrible. Way to go. What was it, Muschamp? Was he the head coach that brought in that stellar recruiting class?
Well, I mean, he got fired like 3 games into the season. So,
but he would have been the one recruiting most of that recruiting.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, so I think they missed a wonderful opportunity in their coaching search. I didn't disagree with them firing Muschamp. I thought that was probably appropriate. I wish they would have waited to the end of the season, but I thought it was appropriate. He hasn't excelled, and Clemson is embarrassing you, and you used to be the better team in the state. So, that's something. But I'm just not hired. I'm not fired up about Shane Beamer. I don't think it's a great hire. I don't really see why they hired him. Apparently he had some connections with people that were saying he's like a good coach, but they had
that's the purpose of having a reference, isn't it? Like, having a reference is the purpose to he's a good coach. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you should hire him.
But it's if you had to have that to get hired at an SEC program, shouldn't you be hired on your merits at an SEC program?
That's what it should be.
If I'm South Carolina, I would have done everything in my power to get Jamie Chadwell from Coastal Carolina. Everything.
That's who I wanted them to hire.
I would have fucking given them the moon. Mr. Chadwell, here's the moon. I brought it down to earth for you.
Oh, that's not enough? Well, let's go get the sun too. Here's the sun for you as well.
That's not enough. Let me give you an entire galaxy. That is what I would have done to get Jamie Chadwell, because he's already recruiting in your backyard. He has roots. He could have just brought his whole staff and they would have been instantly better. But then you decide to go get Shane Beamer from Oklahoma?
Oklahoma, yeah.
Why?
That's one of the biggest. I know I've talked about this to you before, and why I suggested the Coastal Carolina coach for the South Carolina job is I like my coaches having ties to the area that they're coaching in. So that's why I remember when there was conversation about Luke Fickell going to USC.
That was just me speculating. But
I mean, yeah. Okay. Well, I consider you a news source in this world, Cody. If you say it, it's got to be at least a rumor. But I didn't like that because Luke Fickell spent his entire career basically in Ohio. And I just don't see that as USC. That's LA. That's a whole nother world out there. I like my coaches to be at least tied to the area they're from. That's why I think Ed Orgeron works at LSU and doesn't work at USC.
Right.
Right. South Carolina's a shit show.
Carolina?
Nope. That's a two shit show.
One more thing about South Carolina.
Okay.
They have a bunch of cabooses outside their stadium that you can buy for $200,000 to tailgate them. You're only allowed to use it on game day, though.
$200,000?
Yeah, they're owned by like mega fans, and they're basically like super luxury.
So you spend
things.
you spend $200,000
expensive. Yes.
For one game.
Yeah. Well, no, not for one game. Not for one game. You own it. You are the owner of the caboose, and you can stay there after the game. Like it has a little bed in it. But like $200,000 for a caboose that you get to use during the football season. I don't think you're allowed to live there. You're not allowed to actually live there. You can just stay there the night after games because you get
kind of like that.
That is South Carolina for you. Louisville has that, but I don't think they're as expensive.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about one of my favorite head coaches in the entirety of college football, and Mike Leach at Mississippi State.
Okay.
So it was a rough first year. It was actually probably a little bit better than I expected, considering what he has to deal with that roster right now. But I love Mike Leach, and I love what he can do with very little, which that's kind of counterpoint to what I just said, but we'll move on from that. First year in the program. That's what my excuse is going to be.
Right.
But I think
the right guys.
Yes.
Do very little.
He had KJ Costello, who I think was on his like third school or something like that. I'm thinking they're probably trending pretty neutral right now, but I think they could be trending up given over these next couple of years, and could be there. I don't think they'll see. That's the problem with the SEC. There's these teams at the top that aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So you say Mississippi State, I can see them trending for an SEC title in 5 or 6 years. It's like, really? I mean, is Alabama just going to disappear? So realistically, their ceiling is maybe they can compete for an SEC title once every so often. They'll have these great one-off years. I think that's kind of the ceiling for all these middle-class SEC teams.
So my thought on it is like I'm a little bit more worried. I love Mike Leach. I also am a huge Mike Leach fan. Loved him at Washington State. He totally transformed that program. Washington State was a joke before he went there. And I mean, Texas Tech was too. And it's very interesting. But I think that one of the problems that Mike Leach has, especially with Mississippi State has those puppet master donors, just like every other SEC has. And Mike Leach
don't give a fuck.
Mike Leach runs his mouth, and he's going to piss people off. He's going to make people mad. And if he's not winning enough games to make those puppet masters happy, when he pisses them off, he's probably going to get fired.
Yeah.
And I think that is my one concern with Mississippi State, because it isn't like Washington State, where he took a garbage fire program and made it into a respectable program. And they would have done anything to keep him. They tried to keep him. And that's the thing, is because Mississippi State has had flashes of success, and I don't think that you need to be this revolutionary coach to have success at Mississippi State. You can win there. I don't think you can. I think
they've made a bowl game in like 11 straight years or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they're a solid team. And like at one point they were ranked like 1 in the first college football playoff rankings. They were ranked 1 or something like that.
When Dak Prescott was there.
Yeah, when Dak Prescott was there. So I mean, it's not like they're a bad team, and I think that doesn't bode well for Mike Leach there. That being said, I think that he can do a lot there. and I hope he does. I think that the ceiling can go up, but only as far as Mike Leach's mouth will let it go.
Yeah.
You want to stay in Mississippi and talk about
that's actually what I was going to suggest. So that's perfect.
I'm a big Ole Miss fan. My dream is to go tailgate at Ole Miss. I'd really like to do that. That sounds fun, but
you're going to poison one of the trees.
That was at Auburn.
Oh, it was?
Auburn's trees got poisoned, yeah.
I thought it was Mississippi State Ole Miss thing.
No. It was an Alabama fan poisoned Auburn's trees after the.
We'll just cut that out. We'll just cut that out of the podcast.
That's fine. All right. Yeah, I'm a fan of Ole Miss. I want to go tailgating there. I like Lane Kiffin. I've liked him. Well, I liked him at FAU. I didn't like him at Tennessee or USC. But I like him now. I think he's a wild personality that fits Ole Miss and like their mantra, like the shark fin offense or whatever that, or defense that they call it and things like that. I think that they could trend up. I think if the defense gets better, that team is going to be rocking. I mean, so many teams have potential in the SEC. That's the thing when talking about the SEC is like, yeah, we have Alabama to think about, but like outside of Alabama, a lot of these teams could be good. And I think Ole Miss is one of those that could be good, as long as they don't dog pee on the goalpost again.
Yeah. See, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm less optimistic about Ole Miss than I am about Mississippi State.
Okay, you're selling stock in Lane Kiffin, huh?
I'm selling stock. I think we've seen this before. And I mean, what is this? His 5th coaching job?
Yeah.
At this kind of level?
Yeah.
And how's it gone every single time?
Bad.
Not well.
It's still
Why
exciting.
do we think? I mean, okay, but what is one big game that a Lane Kiffin team has won ever?
Oh, never.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do not.
The Conference USA championship game against like Marshall or someone.
Well, when he was at FAU. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, he did have a couple good years at FAU, but maybe that's the level he belongs at. Maybe
I would love to see him go back to FAU.
Maybe he goes to Boise State or something like one of those mid-tier teams that can
he couldn't make it at Boise State.
That's a bad example, but like that kind of team, that can
I feel you.
Occasionally be from 20 to 25 in the rankings, and sometimes they'll have an undefeated season, but it's just not worked out, not once. And yeah, he's matured a lot. You could tell that he's matured a lot, especially just at Ole Miss from
Alabama,
FAU to now.
Alabama.
Yeah.
But I will say this: he had the 6th ranked recruiting class in the SEC, and the 17th overall, which is just really impressive.
It is really good
for Ole Miss. That's impressive.
Yeah.
But that's really all I have to say about it.
Unless you're Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze be like, nah, we're getting the top 5, and I'm going to pay them all, and I'm going to call strippers on my phone. And
Good stuff.
Right.
You want to talk Kentucky next?
Yeah, it looks like we got Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas left to talk about.
Okay, let's talk Kentucky. And then you can talk Tennessee, because I'm not even going to say words about. I'm going to complain about Tennessee. So go ahead, go with Kentucky.
Okay, I have a great respect for the job that Mark Stoops has done with this team. I think he's given this Kentucky team an identity, and I think they've slid into this. Football is never going to be the number 1 at Kentucky. I think we understand that. Basketball is always going to be number 1. So there's never really a chance that they're going to be that consistent playoff or top 10 team every single year. But they've set that identity of a very good defensive team. And if they can get a couple weapons on offense that can help them score, like I remember.
Penny Snell.
Yes. Yep. They can have the year with like they did 2 or 3 years ago where they were 10-3 and they were up to like top 10 in the country for a little bit. But I'm perfectly okay with that being the ceiling for Kentucky. Yeah. I think that's and if you're a Kentucky football fan, I think you should be happy because you're probably caring about the basketball team even more. So you don't really care about how good the football team is. You just don't want them to be Vanderbilt this past year or South Carolina. And they're not anywhere close to being that. They're a respectable SEC team.
I agree. I don't have much to say on Kentucky.
All right, let's talk about Tennessee. And Tennessee's a dumpster fire, so let's move on to Arkansas. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, that's what I'm going to say. That place is a joke.
Oh, my God.
Like, they've got such a great stadium, but that's the only thing great about Tennessee right now.
Their colors. I like their uniforms. I like those.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's fine. Yeah, I like orange. I don't think their coaching hire was great. Josh Heupel or whatever from UCF.
Heupel.
I don't think it was a great hire. It made sense, but I don't think it was a great hire. So, I mean, that's all I have to say. It's just, I've not been impressed. They think they're back, but then their alumni. Actually, it's all their alumni's fault. Their alumni go and ruin everything for them. They could have had the guy from Ohio State that Kerry Coombs or something like that.
I don't know.
A few years ago, they announced that they were hiring a coach. Rutgers head coach.
Oh, Greg Schiano. Yeah.
They announced they were hiring Greg Schiano. They could have had Greg Schiano, and that would have been a great fit for Tennessee, I think, because Greg Schiano is a guy that can rebuild programs. Did it at Rutgers, and then
he's doing it again at
Rutgers. Yeah, Scarlet Knights. But I'm more excited about Rutgers football than I am about Tennessee football. And that's embarrassing, Tennessee. Like, do better.
It's a shit show. My favorite thing is, I don't even remember the name of their last head coach. But he was, so basically the AD, Philip Palmer, who has also been let go now. He left or stepped down or whatever. He wanted to keep the head coach. But the rest of the boosters and the athletic department were like, fuck no, we want to fire this guy. And they wanted to fire him so much that they went out and hired a law firm to dig into their own coach to find recruiting violations so that they had cause to fire him. If that doesn't tell you how fucked up this program is, then nothing else will. So on that point, let's move on. So what, we got Missouri, Arkansas left?
Yeah. Let's hit Missouri because I have a few things to say about Arkansas. I don't have a ton to say about Missouri.
Missouri's just kind of there.
Yeah, they have the 11th ranked recruiting class, so they're bottom of the pack. 28th overall, which is good nationally, I guess. But when you're in the SEC, you might as well not recruit if you're not in the top 5 of your conference.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think they've got an intelligent coach. That podcast I keep mentioning, which is on
Cover 3.
Sports, Cover 3. They call him the Alpha Nerd. I don't really know why, but that's what every time they talk about him, they call him the Alpha Nerd. And they talk about him like way more than they should. Because why are you talking about Missouri?
Yeah.
But I would love to see Missouri pull that season like I think they had in 2012 where they were really good, like their second season in the SEC, and then
the Blaine Gabbert year.
Yeah.
Blaine Gabbert, Jeremy Maclin year.
Yeah, that was a fun year. I'd love to see that, just don't see it happening. They had too many problems with like the whole racism on
Gary
campus.
Pinkel.
Yeah, that was a bad situation. So I think that really hurt them, and it's going to hurt them moving forward. But
I think they're probably on a similar level with Kentucky, where they're not really ever going to be good, but they're not going to be terrible. Like, they're going to win. They're going to surprise you a couple times every year.
Yeah.
And occasionally they'll have a good quarterback who gets drafted to the NFL and then who never does anything in the NFL.
Yeah.
I.e. Drew Lock, Blaine Gabbert, Super Bowl champion now. Blaine Gabbert. Guess who? He was the backup for Tom Brady for the Buccaneers. So he's a Super Bowl champion now.
Good for him. That dub.
All right, final one. Arkansas. No, I don't have a lot really anything to say. They've been pretty terrible these last 3 years.
Yeah,
I'll just run over the record. 3-7, 2-10, 2-10, 4 different head coaches in the last 4 years. So they're searching for that next guy who can.
I think they found him. I think Sam Pittman's the guy. Because their record this past year wasn't that good, but the team looked so much better. They were competitive in every single game they played, including games against Alabama. They didn't a game against Georgia. They led at halftime. They didn't look like the worst team in the country, which they have looked like for the past few years. Sam Pittman is a guy that he recruits well, but then he also is able to develop his guys, get them to play for him, which is something that they haven't had. And I really feel like a positivity around the program. I have a friend who is a huge Arkansas fan. I went to visit him a few years ago at Arkansas, and I was there. They went 2-10 that season. But they played LSU for the game that we went to. And let me tell you, I know the SEC is nuts and they have fans everywhere, but Arkansas fans are a particular kind of nuts. They have 2 stadiums. Did you know that, Dan?
I did not know that.
They have 2 stadiums. They have one that is in Fayetteville. They have one in Little Rock. They play 1 game a year in Little Rock, and they maintain that stadium for Arkansas fans because they want to play a game in Little Rock every year. Just
so they have reach and a reach
yeah.
I don't know.
It used to. It was hard to get from Little Rock to Fayetteville. Now there's an interstate, so it's easier to get there. But Arkansas fans are insane. And
that's really interesting.
Their Fayetteville stadium has a listed capacity of 74,000 people. That LSU game, they were 2-6 at the time, I believe. So one more game they lose, they're not making a bowl game. And the game, they were bad. They knew they were going to lose. LSU was ranked 5. That was Joe Burrow's first year at LSU. He was playing.
2018.
Yeah, 2018. And there were 82,000 people in that stadium to watch a 2-6 team take on the number 5 team in the country. Your team is going to get massacred, and your fans are there supporting you anyways. That is something that, it truthfully is sad that they've been so bad so long. And that's why they have fired coaches and gotten rid of coaches, because they won't accept bad. But Sam Pittman has just done a lot for that program, a lot more than the record indicates. They should have beat Auburn this past year. They should have beat, I think they should have beat Ole Miss. There's some ref calls that just looked bad, or they were awful calls. Awful calls. And granted, I don't think that you should have to depend on refs to win games, but those were 2 games that they should have won.
Yeah.
So they would have won 2 more games and been, I think they were
5-5.
Yeah,
5. They would have been 5-5.
So that's a world.
Maybe we're looking at this. Yeah. Going from 2-10 to 5-5. That's giant step up.
World improved. And right now, 2022 rankings, which aren't official, they're ranked 16th in the country, which is a great improvement from where they've been.
All right. Well, I don't really have anything else to add to that for Arkansas. And that rounds out our SEC conversation today, our state of the conference. All right. Well, that's all for us today. Thank you guys for listening to the Fourth and Long-Winded podcast. This was episode 3. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at 4 and Long-Winded, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll catch you all next time. Thank you.